Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Worlds Beyond with Cam and Ron.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
So we're here to discuss a very happy topic today, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. There are other not-so-happy topics happening in the world of our movies and media that I'll touch on at the end. For now, very excited to talk about what was, I'll just jump right in, I guess, a very successful third volume to this series, to this trilogy of MCU films. A very welcome uptick for the MCU, I guess, after Quantumania was not so hot. You know, we ended on a fairly decent note with Wakanda Forever last fall. Quantumania was billed as this big, it was going to set up a whole bunch of stuff, which I think burdened that movie unnecessarily, probably, to be fair. So all eyes have been on Guardians to say, oh, James Gunn has hit pretty much home run after home run with everything he's done, starting with Guardians in 2014. And is this thing going to live up to the hype? Is this thing going to get the MCU kind of back on track? And I think it did. That's my sort of opening take. What's your initial reaction?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree completely. I think after Quantumania was one of the worst, potentially the worst MCU movie, this is probably one of the best in my opinion, if not the best. Maybe it doesn't have that kind of rewatchability factor that Winter Soldier or any of the Avengers movies have, but from a purely construction, artistic standpoint, it's just the writing, the characters, the dialogue, the jokes, the action, just 10 out of 10, stellar all across the board. I don't really even have a lot of criticisms, but I'm sure I'll think of some as we go on.
So you think this is not only, you think, the best Guardians, but one of possibly the best MCU movie
Possibly the best MCU movie of all time.
Wow.
It just hit all the right notes. It got me emotional, and it felt like I was sitting down in a theater to watch an actual Marvel movie and not some cobbled together focus group tested thing that Quantumania was. Like, you just felt that James Gunn had complete control over everything.
That's the thing that comes shining through. Nobody at Marvel gets in the way of James Gunn for the most part. Well, I mean, he's even spoken about things where he's been asked to do X, Y, or Z. And, the big joke about how was his F-bomb going to get edited out, and it wasn't.
Yeah, thank God.
So, obviously he operates... he answers to Kevin Feige.
I think they go to him. I think he said something like he read the scripts for, forget, Doctor Strange maybe, and a couple other ones, and gave feedback. So they went to him for script feedback on a lot of the Phase 3 movies, I think. So,
which unfortunately, now that he's whatever he is, VP or whatever he is at...
yeah, I don't really know what his title is.
Is he co-president with that other...
With that, other guy.
More producer guy? Unfortunately, he probably won't be able to do any of that the way he... I mean, obviously, he gets a reprieve. This is his movie, so he can promote it. But once that's over, I think he's kind of done.
With Marvel, yeah. It's a bummer. I wish he hadn't gotten fired, because it probably would have meant he would be still working on these movies in some capacity.
One of the best parts about this is they immediately go into... you're getting the last Guardians movie as you come into this. So I think you're going in expecting that you're going to get someone's revelation that makes them decide to move on. You're going to get someone's backstory. Someone's going to, there's always I was holding my breath waiting for oh my God, who is somebody going to get killed off,
I was surprised. There was no big deaths, but it seemed to me like there were at least 3 times when it seemed like a character was going to die, but then they were okay. It's specifically Drax, Nathan Fillion shoots him with that big cannon, and the way the slow motion and the music and everything and how they act, it seems like that was going to be a big death scene, but then the next scene he doesn't even have the wound on him anymore.
Right.
So I almost wonder if maybe they had thought about killing Drax or even Rocket or someone and then changed their mind at the last second.
Yeah, it's possible. Well, I mean, and since now that we've gotten into spoilers, obviously the big scene with Peter at the end, he's out in the vacuum and starts to
that too.
Succumb to the vacuum and, really succumb to the vacuum more so than he has in other films.
I actually knew he wasn't going to die there because they wouldn't have ended it on that goofy shot of his face all puffed up and icy.
Yeah.
That, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh no, someone's going to save him, because you don't want that to be the last time you see a character is in that state.
So what we got in here was the filling in of one of the most intriguing sort of teased backstories among the members of the team. I mean, we know that Mantis grew up with Ego and turned out to be Peter's sister. So we kind of got her reveal.
Right.
We know Peter's backstory. We know that Drax, had a wife and kid on his planet and was chasing after Thanos. We know Nebula's backstory. We know, so really, and I mean Groot. You don't really need. You don't really need his backstory, and he's never. I mean, he's just Groot. So Rocket was the backstory that's been teased about. What was he? Was he really a raccoon from Earth? Who experimented on him? Why? When? Where? How did he get from here to there, or there to here? And so that's the backstory that we get, and through that we get the introduction to the High Evolutionary and his connection to the what do they call the blonde, shiny?
The Sovereign.
The Sovereign, yeah. And and one of the things, just jumping into one of my key thoughts from this movie is, I'm going to butcher his name, but Chikwudi Iwuji, who played the High Evolutionary, like without any fanfare, was one of the best MCU villains
easily
ever. And usually they because of the whole MCU villains always get this rap and whatever else, and there's always, and so I feel like there's always a big fanfare. There was about Kang when he was coming, and even just turning Scarlet Witch into sort of a big bad. And, there was no fanfare about this actor and this character other than that he was going to be one of the antagonists or the antagonist. And he was awesome.
Yeah, he was incredible.
His performance was dynamite. He was like legitimately he was crazy. He was tapped. He clearly had some things wrong with him. Motivation was very strong in terms of why he was doing what he was doing. But yet he was still completely effed up in the head and would go off and be like, kooky comical and then very straight and just the performance and the portrayal of that character, I mean, that was a fantastic villain, and you wanted them to just kick the living shit out of him, and even his own people at one point kind of turn on him. I mean, it was just, that was a fantastic villain.
Yeah, I really like that line, "There is no God, that's why I stepped in."
Right.
I think that's going to go down as like an iconic film line. Maybe not as big as "I Am Your Father," but along those lines. I feel like that's going to catch on.
Just hopping back into ratings for a minute. I mean, this is definitely way upper tier of the MCU for me, and I haven't watched the other two recently enough. I went in with no expectations about the first one. Obviously loved it, and obviously thought, because I was just worried about the obscure character thing, but obviously Gunn just came up with the perfect way to make the obscure characters so relatable and just have the little kind of Star Wars sci-fi riff on it, and that's why the first Guardians was so charming. The second one, I didn't like it on my first watch, then I liked it and kind of almost even liked it better than the first one in some ways.
Yeah, I liked it better than the first one.
After watching it a few times, so it's hard to say without going back and watching them, but this might be.
I think this is probably the best one. It just because, like I said, it's like the first Guardians is great, but it has that villain problem. Ronan the Accuser is not the most compelling villain, and then so it's like everything is great in that movie except for that. Then in Guardians 2, I think it's better than the first one. A lot of people don't like it as much, but they improve some things. Some things could have been better. But this one, just like the villain, the characters, the effects and everything were just off the charts good.
Yeah, I think for some people, I think maybe the ego, the living planet thing just was too weird, or I don't know. I don't know what people's objections were to Guardians 2.
Yeah, I feel like people were saying it was trying too hard to be funny and jokey, and I definitely don't think that I think this third one is probably the funniest out of all of them. Yeah. All the jokes land.
Yeah, I would say for me, all of the humor landed. Obviously, the effects were tremendous. I don't know what you noticed. I didn't notice anything. I thought they were tremendous.
Yeah, no, I really don't have any. I mean, especially coming out of Quantumania, which was looked like an animated movie from 2005. Everything here was great. I love the lighting and the. And it's funny, we talked a little bit about that new technology, the Volume, which is that big round projector that they use. Yeah. I don't think James Gunn used that at all, which I think is noticeable because there's more things to interact with. Even if they were standing on a green screen, there's going to be physical rocks and stuff. So I think they knocked it out of the park. There was plenty of great practical effects, and the CGI definitely broke the trend of Marvel's current kind of iffy CGI deal. So
totally, yeah. I mean, I thought all the effects were just spot on, and then this wasn't like complete, laser blasting flying all over the place, or some big cataclysm that they were trying to depict. So it didn't need any super over the top effects, but I think so everything was just spot on, except, and I mean except in a good way, that fight scene that when they right towards the end,
the big one
when they all got together on the high evolutionary spaceship and were going to save the kids. And it was that signature fight, and where you got to see each of the Guardians in action. That fight was one of the best fights I've seen.
I think, I'm fairly confident saying that is one of the best action scenes in cinematic history.
Wow.
Because it's all, you probably didn't notice this, it's all one shot.
Oh, no, I noticed that.
But that's hard to do on its own. Like, Daredevil did it, and and that's just martial arts. But then adding in multiple CGI characters and CGI enemies, that I don't even know where to begin with that. And so just everyone had to be perfect. There were shots that went through the wounds of the. I don't even know how you would even begin to plan something like that. So I just find it super impressive on a technical level, and obviously it was just so awesome and thrilling. And No Sleep Till Brooklyn was the perfect background track.
And of course, signature Gunn. He works in a little bit of gore that you wouldn't typically see in an MCU fight. Not to mention the high evolutionary's face when it finally showed it after, pulling off the mask after Rocket had wrecked him.
Yeah, I thought he was going to have a more comic book accurate, like in the comic books he has this kind of metal face, almost like Vision. I thought maybe that's what he was hiding under there, but nope, just a skull.
And that fight scene too, it reminded me, it almost had some of the elements that Whedon used in the two Avengers movies when they'd have those scenes where it shifted from character to character and zeroed in on their fight. Those scenes in Avengers were always good, where they would go from character to character,
right? I love
and
that.
kind of like carousel through the battle. But yeah, that was absolutely breathtaking.
All the action scenes were very good. I really liked the kind of heist infiltration they did.
Yes, yeah.
Into Orgo Corp, I guess it was called, and just obviously Nathan Fillion was really funny. We like him from Castle, and
daughter from Castle, Molly Quinn, makes an appearance as a Ravager.
Yeah, they're all friends.
They're all friends of James
Gunn. Yeah, so
the Ravagers were cool. Tying in Gamora's story that way.
Yeah, that was great.
Neat, and just like the way they handled what I thought was funny about all the great cameos. Sylvester Stallone has he has a couple of speaking parts in the movie, and I know there's other folks in there as well. But I love the way they handled that just so offhandedly. Like case in point, in contrast, Bill Murray's.
Where it was like, hey, it's Bill Murray.
It's Bill Murray is now on screen in Quantumania. This, just the way they was like, it's Sylvester Stallone, big deal. He's just a Ravager. That brings me to Gamora's role in this, and the way they handled her relationship with Quill, her, being the sort of pre-Guardians Gamora, and just how they handled, they played it for laughs early with just how Peter was so distraught and such a goober about it, and then the way just through the whole movie she's you don't think she's ever gonna fall back in love with him. They didn't, and that would have been like James Gunn never would have done that.
I don't think he would have even thought about it.
He wouldn't have even thought about it. But and just the way in the sort of, I don't know if it was a post-credit scene or maybe her last scene where she's hugging all the Ravagers, and you really get this feeling that she's where she belongs.
Needs to be.
So I thought they handled that great, but still gave them, she definitely had this moment of like, well, maybe, towards the end. So I think that's all they needed to do. That was a good enough nod to their relationship. Nebula too got to stretch out a little bit more. Her finding a new path after having killed herself, so to speak, in Endgame. So yeah, that was excellent. Everyone's new sort of role, and Drax re-embracing the dad role with the kids at the end. The new team. I loved that the Guardians aren't going away, and we got to see that they are going to continue with Rocket as their leader.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Those new people, and Groot is now back to full Groot.
Yeah, I was happy I wish he was like that the whole movie, but I was a little bit disappointed with Groot's look in this movie. It looks too much like Baby Groot on a big buff body.
Yeah,
That's kind of a weird choice, I think.
Right, he doesn't look like Groot looked in the first one, first film.
But then at the end, they show that he was growing into that Groot that they showed in the post-credit scene, and that is like straight from the very first appearance of Groot in Tales to Astonish, I think it was. That they like just ripped that, because the Groot in the first Guardians is just a original design, whereas that one was a definite reference to the first appearance of Groot. So I loved that.
But it was still, even the grown-up Groot at the end was still, they made him more of like a buff body, sort of humanoid form, whereas Groot in the first film really looked like a giant tree.
Yeah. I really enjoyed Will Poulter as Warlock. If you are expecting the super like kind of stoic and heroic Warlock from the comics, you might be a little bit disappointed, but he's still like just as powerful, if not more, than he is in the comics. And what they did with him, there's a reason he's kind of a doofus, and that's because he was taken out of his cocoon too early. But just all the jokes, that first shot of him flying in, and his face is like right at the camera, and anytime he's like flying around, they have this weird like camera angle that's like kind of close up and makes his face look a little silly, but I don't know, it just looked really cool. And then I just liked all the jokes and stuff involving him.
Just making him a big doofus, But he gets his moment at the end, and then he becomes one of the Guardians.
Right. Yeah, I was a little bit concerned that they were going to kill him, or there was like 3 or 4 times where they could have easily just said he's dead. But he kept coming back, and I'm glad that he eventually did switch, because obviously he is a good guy in the comics, and he's part of the Guardians in the comics too.
And so let's see, things that any negatives?
I don't know. I can't think of anything that I didn't like.
I don't have any negatives in terms of things I outright didn't like. I would say rating soundtracks, it's a good soundtrack, and there's some great songs on here. I love that they put a rainbow song in there, but of the 3 soundtracks, I would say this is probably the least strong.
I liked all of this. I can't say I didn't. I would. I don't know if I agree or disagree. I think the first 2 were limited to that 70s soundtrack, whereas this brings in all different genres and eras and stuff. So I think either it works for you or it doesn't. You know?
Yeah, I just for the first 2, all the songs hit with me.
Right.
Whereas in this one, there was a 2 or 3 that I didn't dislike, but just didn't hit me as much as the others. And then my only other thing, if I had any criticism of the writing or the tone or anything like that in this film, they leaned into the heartstrings, where family, where saving everybody, and then the whole thing at the end, and I love you guys, and everything else. And I know, like, you could see how James Gunn crafted this movie to just have this sort of, I would almost call it like this like arc of joyousness that the whole thing built to at the end, and he really wanted to leave people with just that joyous, hopeful, and I thought that was brilliant and excellent. Did I feel like it tugged on the heartstrings maybe a little bit too much? And one counterpoint to that, it was great to see Quill briefly became the old Quill when they were on the biospace station, and he really did trick that girl about wanting to, I just want to say my piece, and maybe people will believe this. And no, I just want to get in the computer. So it's good to see a little bit of the old, and I guess everybody got their moment during that final battle to be a badass again, but it was nice, but like, so I would say, like, case in point, like Nebula's 180 into this like very do-gooding kind of personality that she has now, but I mean, I guess she's on her like redemption arc. She wants to change her life. But there were there were moments where I felt like, okay, laying it on a little thick, but they were very minimal.
Yeah, and it was effective ultimately.
And it all worked.
Made the movie that much better. If I had a criticism, I was hoping for a little bit more Rocket and Lila and his friends doing stuff outside of like they're just limited to that.
They never got a chance to do anything.
And whereas in the comics they have all these adventures and everything else.
I didn't know those characters were in the comics.
Lila is, the other 2 are based on characters from the comics, but they're original creations by James Gunn. But like, he has a friend that I think his name is Walrus in the comics, so obviously you don't want to do that. And then Yeah, I think he does have a rabbit friend too, but very different from what was shown in the. So I
think that would have been one thread too many if they had to go.
It needed just to be in that specific moment in time as opposed to anything else. But as a big Rocket Raccoon fan, I was hoping for a little bit more of his comic elements to show up, but obviously it worked. So
yeah, it worked very well, and again, it built up all that animosity toward the High Evolutionary and OrthoCorp and everyone just for what they did. So I think, again, the whole antagonist arc and elements of this story and film and performances were just fantastic. So 2 huge thumbs up. Very excited about the MCU now. The whole Victoria Alonso flack and all that, and just Quantumania.
Seems like they're trying to correct the ship a little bit.
I mean, now we have to do, now the writer strike is happening, so hopefully that all gets resolved to everybody's satisfaction, and we can get back on board. Super psyched for Secret Invasion. It looks really like it could be one of the best MCU TV shows so far.
I don't
fingers crossed.
Get my hopes up.
But from what I've seen and from what people are saying about it, and obviously you take all the comments with a grain of salt, but it sounds like it's going good. But so while on the one hand, and I have to say, I think I might have even said this in the last episode because it might have been out by then, but I like the Marvels trailer and the idea of what they're doing with that movie is these 3 characters come together and there's this unlikely reason why they're all kind of stuck together and getting put in each other's worlds, and there's comedy and there's bringing along
I think it looks a lot of fun.
Iman Vellani's character, so I mean I'm excited about it, and that's really the next MCU film we're going to get. I know Loki's coming in somewhere along the way.
Once they figure out if they're going to cut majors from it or not.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's a whole nother dilemma. The only thing that gives me pause though, so I'd be outright okay, yeah, we're back on track, except for the fact that this is a James Gunn film,
right? Yeah.
As much as it is an MCU film, he's been a huge part of the MCU, even outside of his specific films and all that stuff. But his films are very much his own thing, and so you can't just say, "Oh, now we're back on track," because this is a James Gunn film. So, but hopefully, we're back on track.
Let's hope, and hopefully he can do some good work over at DC. I'm still a little bit skeptical that they're going to make it through the whole plan that they've laid out over at DC, but we'll see.
It still doesn't. They've announced casting casting rumors anyway for his Superman movie. I'm just like, this is now same thing with Batman. How many Superman origin movies have we had?
Well, I think James Gunn writing it, I feel like he's super aware of that, and it'll probably be something different and not the same origin story that we've seen 80 gazillion times.
So all good stuff, and I think probably coming up for us next, maybe something. There's a couple of horror movies we want to see. We did see and both liked Scream.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that we'll do a whole thing on that, and it's probably it's already streaming, so kind of the wave has passed. But just to throw in a few words about Scream, like this one, did not really care for Scream 5.
Scream 5, but
this one I thought was very good, very good. So getting to sad stuff, I'm really, really, really upset that Netflix did not renew Lockwood & Co. Such great books. Such a great job they did with the show. I'm watching it and I'm finishing my 5th watch. I'm sure I'll watch it a few more times, and especially if it can have any impact on it getting picked up anywhere else, or Netflix pulling their heads out of their butts or whatever.
I know. It's just like the whole show's ending after one season on Netflix just really irritates me. It's like, why even bother doing it? Why even bother putting the money in if you're just going to cancel it? And it's one thing when it's just some kind of random show that you just notice is on Netflix, but like I remember Cowboy Bebop, they had all these featurettes and like how they were teaming up with the original creator and the original composer and making new music and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like a week later after it came out, they canceled it.
Yeah, that didn't even last.
I know. And so it's like, what's the point of doing all that promotion, all that hype? And like if you're it's very frustrating.
But I love what I'm seeing online and trying to participate in as much as I can, this drive to just say, we're not going to take this lying down and hopefully get another streaming service perhaps to pick up. I don't know if it's possible that Netflix would ever reverse a decision, but hopefully getting perhaps another streaming service to pick up Lockwood & Co.
Yeah.
Absolutely watch it. Don't, even though I'm telling you it's already canceled and there's plenty of shows that we go out and I'm not going to watch it because I know it's canceled. This covers the first 2 books of a 5-book series. It covers them in its entirety, so I think you can absolutely thoroughly enjoy this, even though you're going to be left a little bit hanging at the end. But anyway, save Lockwood & Co.
Sign the petition.
Sign the petition.
Just Google it. There's 2 of them.
Anyway, thanks so much for joining us again for Worlds Beyond with Cam and Ron. Like us, tweet us, whatever those things are, wherever you pick up your podcasts. That always helps. We're not the best podcast marketers in the world. We're slowly but surely trying to work on that. But thanks anyway for listening.
And we'll see you on the next one then.